Out in Italy, where in the gloaming on the bonny banks of Hyde, roaming in the gloaming.
In 1933, the United States was mired in the greatest economic depression it had ever witnessed. Since the Depression began in 1929, businesses repeatedly cut wages each year to stay afloat. Across the nation, strikes broke out over shrinking wages and violations of laborer rights. On April 1st, 1933, Vermont's granite workers went on strike, and their employers looked north to replace them. The strikers, members of the Quarry Workers and the Granite Cutters International Unions, were both affiliated with the American Federation of Labor. They were fighting for recognition of their unions and for an increase in their wages from their pay of 32 cents an hour, which they argued was not a livable wage.
Gas bombs hurled in Montpelier, Vermont. Crowds menace workmen at plant. The Boston Globe, April 7, 1933. 150 deputies ready in Granite dispute. Manufacturers to resume operations today despite Vermont walkout. The Washington Post, April 10, 1933. The Italian owners would go up to Canada and bring the Frenchmen down here. These men came down from Canada to work in the stone sheds, and of course, the men didn't like it because they took their jobs away from them. They worked for less money, so they got in. The Italians weren't pleased that those guys took their jobs away.
The worst part was that even the little kids did not play with their former playmates. They called the kids names saying, "Your pa is a strikebreaker. He's a bozo, a scab." Even people going to church to attend a service would not sit next to a strikebreaker. They would go to another pew.
Board to set granite wage scale for nation. Decision in Vermont granite cutters dispute expected to be made base for code to be submitted to government. At the end of April, the granite manufacturers decided to bring up the pre-strike contract again. The proposal was again rejected by the unions. The Washington Post, April 10, 1933.
By 1933, the industrial holiday, as the strike was called, still continues. The defacing of the Cross Mausoleum at Northfield, a business family in the granite industry, breaking of a piece from the seat, a part of the exedra of the Soldiers' Memorial at Barre, the smearing with oil and grease of 3 cars of granite from the Wetmore and Morse quarry, the breaking of every pane of glass in a building in Barre are the worst cases of vandalism reported and authenticated. The union officials deplored these acts and urged union members to obey the law and its representatives. May 1933, the Monumental News. During the Great Depression, the military were frequently used to suppress labor riots. On May 7, 1933, 2 companies of the Vermont National Guardsmen moved into Barre to assume patrol duty in preparation for the reopening of 7 granite sheds. The soldiers were ordered to Barre by Governor Stanley Wilson, who said martial law would not be declared unless serious trouble made the move necessary. According to the general laws of Vermont, the commander-in-chief, or in his absence, the lieutenant governor, or in the absence of both, the adjutant and the inspector general, may, in case of riot, rebellion, or insurrection within the state, or in case of great opposition to the service or legal process, whether civil or criminal, or in any case of invasion, or imminent danger thereof, call out the National Guard.
Vermont troops watch end of granite strike. Barre, Vermont. The National Guard came on May 8th, forcing the strikers to retreat. Some of the quarries resumed work despite pushback. The Washington Post, May 8th, 1933.
Colonel Leonard Wing was forced to patrol the granite manufacturing plants, taking away responsibility from Barre City's police. He explained that his men had been ordered to allow no persons to congregate, and for that reason, he had kept pedestrians moving.
Recall troops who get tough. May 12, 1933. Spokane Daily Chronicle.
To add fuel, there was a protest to bring the police back to patrol the city. 200 businessmen filed grievances with the city council. charging that the soldiers used undue authority while carrying out their patrol duties yesterday. This caused outrage among the World War I veterans in Barre's American Legion Post. They published a resolve condemning the Guard, which stated, "Let the people of this state think on this. A bayonet charged against an unarmed man, women, and children who are loyal Vermonters." The Guardsmen entered stores, the merchants said, forced customers to leave the buildings, and ordered the storekeepers to close. Merchants also accused the troops of ordering citizens to hurry along the streets. When some were slow, they said bayonets were brought into play, and dozens or more persons suffered minor injuries and torn clothing.
We were scared. At 4 o'clock, the men got out of work. The National Guard escorted them in a car from the shed to the car to go home. These men were hollering. They called them bozos, the ones that worked, because they had no contract. They used to throw stones at the cars that the men were riding. This one guy threw a stone and the soldiers chased him. I don't remember if they caught him or not. They must have caught him because there was a whole bunch of soldiers there. To date, there's been no denial forthcoming from Governor Stanley C. Wilson, who is responsible for the presence of the militia, that he ordered them to break the strike because he is a stockholder in the Rock of Ages Corporation. Daily Worker, June 2nd, 1933.
Colonel Wing personally commanded the troops and had charge of the general situation during their initial mobilization and during the most critical period of the service. He being on practically 24-hour duty for 4 days, and by this duty ending the most critical period of the strike. It is a source of much gratification that the mission given to the troops to perform in the original mobilization order was performed without bloodshed or undue injury to any individual. The troops were on this duty for nearly a month. Not a single case of serious injury was reported. Despite the country being under tremendous economic stress, Vermont's Granite strike came to an end only after the National Guard left. The strike of 1933 left lingering resentment towards the French-Canadian strikebreakers, who over time integrated into central Vermont's communities. Although the strikers did not get a wage increase, they managed to halt any further cuts to their wages. For many of Barre's residents, the strike of 1933 was a shocking and traumatic experience that they never forgot.